across the country, you can see the attack on women's rights, like the rights to, our bodies and our rights to choose what's best for our bodies. That's coming under attack. And I think that's as a result of the fact that they can see this, we're showing up in numbers.
You're listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now, without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hey there, No Labels, No Limits podcast listeners, and welcome back to another week of great conversation with a new guest. And I'm Sarah Box, your host of this podcast, which, if you've been listening, you know that by now. But at this podcast, we're on a mission to help individuals, teams, and organizations, nonprofits in particular, to think outside the box, move beyond limiting beliefs, and create profound impact in the lives of others. And we do this, as you know, by sharing accomplished and inspiring guests, men and women, people who've challenged their own labels and beliefs or have gone through what I would say, gone through the fire and emerged on the other side of it, burnished and stronger or more wise, so we can all learn from that. And that's what we look for in our guests and love to bring to you. And so today we are honest. We are honest. We are honest. We are honored to have Alreen Haeggquist with us on the show. Now, she is a distinguished lawyer. She is passionate about advocating for women, and specifically women who have suffered sexual abuse, harassment, or discrimination. And she has more than 2 decades of legal experience and personal history that fuels her fight for justice. Alreen is not just a lawyer, if you can say that. I mean, just what it takes to become a lawyer. She's more than a lawyer. She's a beacon of hope for many. And she is the author of Fired Up, Fueling Triumph from Trauma, which has been described as a really powerful narrative that shares her own journey and the lessons learned from overcoming personal and professional challenges. So you can see the fit for Alreen with the show right there. And today I'm going to talk to her a bit about her personal motivations for legal advocacy, her writing process, her own emotional journey, the challenges in high-profile legal cases, and then advice for overcoming hardships. We may not touch on all of them. As you know, sometimes something comes up and we follow it where it takes us. So, Alreen, with that, let me formally welcome you to the No Labels, No Limits podcast show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. And I do have to correct you with my name. So my name is Alreen. It's Alreen, not Arlene.
Alreen, okay. Alreen. Okay, listeners, here's the funny part. I had her correct me on how to pronounce her last name before we went live. Did I think about her first name? No. So, hey, that just shows we're all human.
Yes.
So, Alreen, cool. Thank you for correcting me on that, because I really do prefer calling people by the name they prefer to be called.
Yeah.
So, but let's just start a little bit at the beginning. So you set out to become a lawyer. And why? Like when you were leaving school and you were going through college and all that, did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer?
Yeah, so I've known I wanted to be a lawyer since I was a young kid. That was kind of what kept me motivated to keep going. And where did that come from? I had a really, I guess, troubled childhood in the sense it was very abusive and not really healthy. And the spiritual leader of the religion we were part of was a lawyer. And I didn't have any other mentors. I didn't have anybody else to look up to. And I was like, oh, well, he's a lawyer. That's a good thing to be. And so as a kid, I didn't really understand what it meant to be a lawyer. I didn't quite grasp it. And as I got older, I used to think it was just about arguing. And when I was growing up, my mom, she was silent. She didn't say anything about what was going on at home. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be a lawyer because I can use the law to voice injustice. And as I got to college, I continued to learn more about what that meant. And then, of course, I got to law school, and then I really honed in on what I was passionate about, which is advocating and being a voice for those that have been abused and victimized by those who think they have power over them.
So who typically seeks you out? Like, are it, so I'm not even saying your first name right. Is it people within the workplace who come to you, or are they one-offs like, might I just show up at your office and say, this is what's going on? Who typically seeks you out?
So most of our clients that seek us out are women in the workplace. So employees who have worked for a variety of companies. You can be a restaurant worker all the way to a CEO at a company, could be our client. And so those are the people that seek us out, and they've either experienced some sort of sexual harassment, sexual assault, retaliation, gender discrimination. And those are the majority of our clients. Another group of our clients are those that have been sexually assaulted by an institution or a provider. So you go to your doctor's office and your doctor, inappropriately touches you as part of the examination. Those are some of our other clients.
So you said this, you kind of wanted to give people a voice from your mom being silent. Yeah. What did your mom think about you becoming a lawyer?
So my mom still has really no understanding of what I do on a daily basis, right? Like she had an arranged marriage when she was 17 years old. She had 10 kids and she barely speaks English now. And so she was really proud of me being a lawyer, but she has really no idea what that means, who I help, what I go up against. She just likes the title that her daughter's a lawyer. That's it.
Hey, that's something to be proud about. You don't understand it. That's pretty cool. All right. So let me ask, let's go on a little different thing. So I want to kind of separate that out and then how that led to you writing, all of that. So let's talk about a couple of your high profile entities that you've taken on and what that's been like, for whatever you can share. But I'm really interested in like what the journey is like for the person going through that, because it's by the time someone comes to you, they're already not in a good space. How you work with them and how maybe going through the process changed them.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I would say most of our clients, right, when they come to us, they are afraid of the consequences of what's going to happen if they come forward. Are we going to believe them? Because right now nobody has, right? They've tried to not come to a lawyer and figure it out themselves, but they haven't been able to get the help that they need. They don't know if it's going to affect like their job. Are they going to get fired? Or if they've already been fired, are they going to find another job if they come forward with a lawsuit? What happens if they lose? What are the consequences? Are they going to sue her? So like they come in very scared, unknowing of their rights and not knowing what the path looks like. So when you step into our office, it's really important for us to not only listen to you and to tell you we hear you and we believe you, but then also to share with you what your rights are, right? To provide you with the power and the knowledge of what the law provides. And what they've been experiencing is wrong, even though somebody's been telling them that it's not a big deal, there's nothing wrong with it, they're over exaggerating, they're being dramatic, the guy didn't do anything wrong. Even though they've been told that, that's not true, right? And this is what the law says, this is what we've decided as a society that the laws are. So letting them know that, letting them know what their options are, like how they can approach it and which way they want to go, and then giving them the choice of how they want to proceed is also very important to us. The other thing at our firm, we have a survivor advocate, somebody who's trauma informed, that's there for the client. It's there for us, one, so as lawyers, we don't re-traumatize our clients by asking them questions and talking to them about their story, but also is there for the client to have somebody in between the lawyer, right? Somebody who has been part of the litigation process, but is not a lawyer and is there to support them because litigation, is tough. It does take a toll. So we have that person involved in it as well. And then we make sure the client understands that she's not going to be alone going through this. Like she's going to have a whole team, with her as she steps into this light of coming forward.
And I imagine, that whole feeling of being victimized, right? Part of the psychology is that you're singled out. You feel you're the only one, mm-hmm. right? So knowing you have a team behind you is empowering in and of itself once you feel safe and you can trust it.
Right.
So your advocate functions much like a victim advocate on the court side would, for folks who might be more familiar with that model.
Exactly. So there's victim advocates in the criminal side, in criminal investigations. So our victim advocate, we do civil work. And so she is at our law firm playing that same role, but for us.
Now, Alreen, is that common in law firms? I didn't think so, because I'm thinking, that seems special.
It is special. Yeah, that is definitely something that we have that other law firms don't, but we are a big proponent that we believe all law firms should have it, right? We're not the only ones that deal with clients that have been traumatized. Other law firms should also have a survivor advocate, victim advocate for the same reason, so that your clients have a place and a person to go through as they go through the litigation process.
Well, and that advocate is knowledgeable about the system and can help people understand what to expect, right? And
exactly.
Because we make up stories in our head about how terrible something is, and the advocate can say, well, I get that, but here's really what's going to happen.
Right.
And you might be able to expect this, and we're all here for you. That is, just in having that is so great.
Yes, I agree. I
imagine it encourages people who might otherwise back out or go, I can't do this, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it also just helps, like, that she's not a lawyer, right? There's still something there with people come to a lawyer. There is like a barrier there to break through. And so I think she really provides that. It's like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just somebody who's gone through this before. And I understand it's complicated. Lawyers throw out different words. The court's throwing out different words. And I'm just here to explain what I'm here for you.
Yeah, I know. I think of those people. I mean, not just her, but that role is like someone who can navigate for you when you feel kind of lost. And, I love when they have that in medical offices, or if they have a high level nurse who spends time, because it's like everything starts getting clear. You've been heard. So.
Yeah, I just recently had my own experience with that. My husband and I just took over guardianship over a 7-year-old, and he has some special needs in school. And so we had to hire an advocate for special ed. One, I didn't know a special ed advocate existed. Two, I thought, well, I'm a lawyer. I should understand all this. But the terms were so foreign and just, it felt like Chinese. And so for the first time, that was my first time understanding how my clients feel when they come into my office. And I'm talking like it's nothing. But for them, it's just like, whoa, like there's so many terms. You're saying so much to me. And it's hard to follow. So that's what I think Christy, our survivor advocate, is doing for our clients. The same thing, the advocate that I've hired for me. And I'm like, oh, it's so important.
It is. It just makes life. It's like when they say you're in kindergarten, just hold hands. It makes things better. It's with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really cool. I know I'm a big CASA advocate as well for family. I mean, it's really tough. So, So since you've taken on these high-profile entities to defend women's rights, what challenges have you personally faced in these battles? So where have you hit a wall where you're thinking, you got to be kidding me, we're still dealing with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also helped me with my personal growth as I do these cases. And, I've definitely told clients that, thank you, because this has helped me grow into being a better person. And what I mean by that is earlier on in my career, these men that we would be going up against, I was never afraid of them. So a lot of clients come in and they're like, oh my God, this guy is, this high level, like he's a sheriff, he's the second in command in San Diego, or, he's the CEO of this company, or he's the owner of this company, or he has a lot of money and everybody knows him and he's well connected and he can affect my entire career in this one field. So they come going up against somebody that's well-resourced, high profile in their industry, and they're really scared about what that person can do to them. And I don't ever have that fear. And the reason being is because I experienced the biggest bully in my life. I experienced my father. Going up against him or standing up to him was there's really nothing else scarier to me, right? Like as a child experiencing that, there's really nothing else that scares me. And so when I was young in my career, these men, they were really triggering to me. And I would what people would call pop off, right? I would be angry and I would go off on them.
Yeah, those reactions that sometimes when you're going, whoops.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not the most professional behavior. And so, but I didn't know that's what was causing it. Like I didn't know I was being triggered based on my past. And it wasn't until I got through therapy, I did some of these cases, and now I'm still like that, but it's in control, right? I'm not being triggered and I'm not reacting, but I'm using that anger and that passion on behalf of my clients. That makes me a really special advocate because I understand it and I do put myself in their shoes because I have, experienced something very similar.
Yeah. And it makes you fierce, but not
crazy, not a crazy angry person.
I was going, now, how can I put this?
Yeah,
it's not being controlled by the trigger.
Right.
But recognizing the trigger, that's the beauty of therapy, right?
Correct.
We can learn our triggers and go, okay, I'm human. That sucks. Here's why. Let's do something different.
Yeah. And then learning to use it, right? So it's just like, I just figured out, oh, that's what's happening. And now I have an awareness of it. And now I'm able to control it and really use it to somebody else's advantage.
Yeah. No. Do you ever have those moments where all of a sudden you've said something because you were triggered and you think, oh, that was out loud?
Yeah. That's
I know. I really have come a long way and not because I get mad and I just want to say something.
Right.
Yeah. I did that at a family gathering when a cousin I hadn't seen.
That's usually where it comes out.
Are you off your rocker? We're in a public place and I go, hey. Here's my husband next to me and I can just see him going, calm down. But it was out. It was out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Never happens in work, never happens public, and that, it's like, you're right, family. It's like, right. Okay, let's just take the gloves off.
But we're human and we can always say, I apologize for it coming out like that, or I'm apologize for saying it that way. Right.
And the gal I was defending laughed. She says, oh, I got it. These guys who were really drunk at the point, she goes, this is normal for me. They're all just being guys. And she goes, I got it. It's cool. I was thinking, oh man. But anyway, it's so funny that whole therapy thing and how it comes out. I am totally off track. I want to come back. So think about how over your career, the landscape has changed or is changing. Like, what are some of the shifts for the better you've seen? And even if there's some that aren't better, what shifts have you seen so we can all be more aware?
There's been a huge shift as a result of the Me Too movement. That's a huge shift I see culturally in society. It was women coming out for a moment that what we were talking about earlier, where you feel so alone. You think you're the only person that's ever happened to. You can't say anything because nobody will understand. People are going to judge you. They won't accept you. And the Me Too movement really showed that they weren't alone. This has happened to a lot of other people. And it wasn't until one person came forward that others were able to say Me Too. And so I think that was so powerful, that movement. And as a result of that, we have a lot more laws to change what was going on, right? There was, before the Me Too movement, a lot of our laws allowed for the secrecy, right? Because it came out like, how did this happen to so many women and nobody knew? Well, there was all these confidential settlement agreements and there was arbitration agreements, and they kept the woman's story from being, told. And as a result of the Me Too movement, those laws now are in place to stop that, right? You don't get to stay silent. They can't prevent you from talking about the harassment or the discrimination you experience. So that's what the landscape has changed. Also, from like a business perspective, when I started my firm 16 years ago, it was really rare for a female-owned law firm, right? Women weren't starting their own firm. There was, the guy that ran the firm, he worked for the guy, and he dominated our industry.
Yeah, and that's a great way of putting it. The guy who worked for the guy. Oh, that's perfect.
And that's changing. Now women are realizing they can do it on their own. And I see a lot more women starting their own law firms and going out and starting their own practices. without waiting for some man, to advance their career. So I think that's really changed from like a law firm perspective as well. So I do think the landscape is changing, but as a result, as we get more power and we come out, what you're also seeing is the fight against that, right? The fight against taking away our rights and trying to keep our power down. So, and I think that will continue.
Wait, say that again, because I thought I heard it one way and then I started hearing it a different way. So is it retribution to the more leadership? Are you saying it's kind of a reaction to more women law firms, or?
And not even just law firm as a whole. I'm just saying, like, from
Right.
I'm talking from like my legal standpoint of what I see changing as women are becoming more powerful, or not even becoming, recognizing how powerful they are.
Right,
and
showing up in it.
But as a result of that, across the country, you can see the attack on women's rights, like the rights to, our bodies and our rights to choose what's best for our bodies. That's coming under attack. And I think that's as a result of the fact that they can see this, we're showing up in numbers.
Well, as a group, we are an economic force.
That's right.
But when you read the research of how much, even in a home where a woman may not make the most money, typically she's directing the spending. So when I read that, and I thought, oh, that's so cool, right? Because I know it as an independent person, but I don't know like globally how it is. So yeah, I was wondering if you saw that kind of backlash, But once the cat's out of the bag, it's out of the bag.
It's out of the bag.
Yes, we adjust and move on.
Yes.
I just figure people get their knickers in a twist and then they get used to it and they go, okay, let's just move on.
Yeah.
Right? So I would love if you would talk about your book, Fired Up, Fueling Triumph from Trauma. And first of all, it's a really evocative title. So can you talk to us or with us a bit about your process for writing it, what your goals for writing it were?
Sure. So I don't know. I didn't think through a process, just so you know, about writing it. I just started.
Such a doll.
I just started writing it. And my thought of when I started it was just to talk about my story as to the abuse I experienced as a child and kind of what I've done with it, right? Where it's taken me, what I've done so I'm not living in it. And when I was writing, you focus on like, who's your audience or your North Star, like who is this book for? And it was really, I thought about all the people in my family that hadn't done the work, right? Hadn't gone through this evolution of the trauma. They were still there. And how do I help them, come out of it, come out from the silence and heal themselves? So that's kind of what kept me going. And the process was exactly that, just starting off by like, what is my story? What happened to me? What did I experience? And it was the first time that I wrote it out. And I think it was very emotional because when you're telling your story, there's always something else you remember. It's not like it all just comes to you with one broad stroke. It's this, when you're writing this story, it reminds you of this other thing, and it brings back feelings, it brings back the experience, and it takes you back to where you were and you relive it. So it was emotional. I think what's amazing about it, though, as more I, wrote and edited, right? There's a lot of editing that happens. Each time you read it, it had less of an impact, right? It's like it dissipates, the pain dissipates as a result of it, which is why I'm such a big proponent of not keeping your story silent, because it will continue to eat at you until you get it out in some fashion. What prompted me to write it was, twofold. One, I feel like my clients are so brave for coming forward and telling their story, right? And they have to be cross-examined about it and told that they're lying or they're making it up. And I think they're so brave for continuing forward. And I wanted them to know that I could do it too. I'm not bringing a lawsuit. My abuse was a long time ago, but to know that I understand what it feels like to tell your story, despite feeling scared of the consequences that occur as a result. So I did it for that reason. And I couldn't figure out another way to show other women that by telling your story, it's actually empowering, and that's how you get to the other side. Until you share what's inside, you won't get to the next level of where you want to be. So that was the reason I wrote it, and that's kind of what propelled me to continue writing it.
I'm curious, since you like your target audience, or the picture in your head was your family and the people who didn't process or hadn't yet processed, what kind of feedback or reaction did you get from them? Did they read the book?
So I think I'm still in that process, right? So my book came out September 12th, and it's kind of been twofold. One group will continue to ignore it, like we have forever, right? Like it didn't happen. And I have another group who doesn't want to talk to me, right? Like who is upset for letting out the family secret and doesn't understand why I needed to share it. And then there are like the next generation, right? Like the kids of like my nieces and nephews, you know, who are so thankful because I think for the first time, they're getting perspective from their parents, right? Like how we behave, you know, we're passing on that generational trauma. Like I wanted to stop it, but at least they understand where their parents were coming from. So they're thankful for it.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes our own generation is slow, but like you said, younger folks tend to be more open. It's not them, right? It's like, what do they have? They don't need to defend something. It's not them.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
So when we can be a little more open, I remember having a family conversation, like brothers, sisters. I think a couple of my cousins were there saying, remember when this happened? And I'm going, okay. They said, you were there. I go, I was. Wait, well, the way they're telling it, I'm going, I have no memory of that. But the way, how specific they were, I'm going, well, that sounds right. But the takeaway for me was, because later another cousin said, do you remember this? And I said, here's what I know about memory and families. Whatever you remember is true for you.
Yeah, exactly. That was your experience, your perspective. And I really tried to be really mindful of that when I wrote my book. Like it was my story. I didn't want to tell anybody else's story. And
you don't need to sugarcoat it.
And I don't need to sugarcoat it, but I wasn't trying to share your experience. I was trying to share my experience. And as a result, you know, you're related to me. So that just.
So you take from it what you want.
Yeah.
But it is, you know, sometimes it takes people a while to sit with something and they go, you know, she was right, you know, or, okay, now I'm brave enough or feel safe enough. I might want to look at that myself. So you never know how long or when something might pop for somebody else. So that I really congratulate you on writing that, because just from your recounting of how your process was, I know it wasn't a walk in the park.
No, it was not. It was not a walk in the park. And they're all different parts to it, right? Like writing it, but then the next part was getting it in an actual book, right? It becomes more real, right? When you're writing it, really at that moment, it's still kind of like a journal, right? It's still just to you, not sharing it with anybody else. But then now you have it in book form. You're like, oh, the step's getting a little closer. And then the publication of it. Right now it's like, okay, it's out. It's out to everybody. But that was still exhilarating. That was still exciting. And because I think I worked through like the fears of it coming out as I wrote the book.
Well, it's that whole thing. You kept taking a step forward, much like your clients, right? So scary to walk in your front door.
Yep.
And then they get through the process regardless of the outcome, right? If they've been treated well by you and your team, even if not, it doesn't turn out exactly the way you or they hoped, they can celebrate because they went through the process.
Yeah.
You know, and that changes us. It's like, okay, I'm stronger than I thought I was.
Exactly. And that's the other part that I see. And that's really what makes me so happy is when I take that client who is so scared, so afraid, feels powerless, doesn't feel like they can do anything. And then at the end of the process, how empowered they are. Like they found their voice again and they know how powerful they really are.
Man, I'd want you to be my lawyer.
Hopefully you don't need me, which is what I always tell people. Hopefully you don't need me. But
I hope I don't need you. I really do hope I don't need you. Yeah. Is that the only law you probably know? You'd be fun to work with, though. Not that having to deal with the legal system is necessarily fun. Let me back that.
No, it's not. I can't say it's my job, but it's different when you're in it, right? Like there is negative energy surrounding it.
Well, it's adversarial.
Yeah, it's adversarial, exactly.
Yeah. So by nature, it's tense.
Yeah.
Re-traumatizing at times.
Yeah.
So, but I do think this is the one thing I really like and respect about lawyers or the legal profession. So this is not a blanket statement, but I do like the rigor of thinking, and having to be, okay, why am I asking this? Why are we looking for this? Like, because it's very strategic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know I was in a class and I asked this guy, what do you do? Oh, you probably don't want to know. I go, what? I'm a lawyer. And I go, what kind of law? And I don't care what kind of law. I respect you. I mean, you just get a bad rap.
We do get a bad rap. I mean, that's funny because when people ask me, I usually say, oh, I work downtown.
My husband did that. He was in law enforcement. And he said, I'm a public employee.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, it just saves the heartache.
It does. And then people get uncomfortable. You're like, I don't know how you're going to take it. So we'll just leave it at that.
I had a board member who, when he ceased being a board member, he says, I will always, if you ever need me as a lawyer, I'll be here for you. Just reach out. And I'm thinking, you are a criminal defense lawyer. You are the toughest one of the toughest in our region. I said, I love you, Scott, honestly, but I hope to never call you requesting legal assistance.
Yes.
Ever.
Ever.
Oh my, never, ever. So what do you hope, or what's next for you, your firm? Like, do you have hopes for your firm to shift something major, or do you have something you're going and want to keep going down this path for this reason?
We like at our firm, high impact litigation is what we call it. So anytime we can make a change, not only for our client, but a bigger change, right, that has a ripple effect in our community is really the litigation we seek out. And I know we're going to continue to do those types of cases.
Do you have examples of a couple of your high impact litigation?
So the one that we're currently involved in, there is a huge attack right now on the LGBT community across the country. And shockingly to me, because it's my community right here in San Diego. And so we're suing the Grossmont Unified School District for the board's really like outward response to being anti-LGBTQ. So to me, that's high impact because again, it's going after a school district and a board that thinks they're above the law. It's like, that's great that you have these views of this community, but the law still makes it unlawful. And so that really is important to me with people who think they can get away with it, to let them know that the law still stands. Like our society still says it's illegal to discriminate against somebody because of their sexual origin or sexual identification. So
you're taking on the local school district. Do you go up then after that to the State Board of Ed? I mean,
so we're suing them in the San Diego Superior Court.
Okay.
And
so it hits that.
Yep. Yeah. We're not going through an administrative proceeding.
Go girls. Go girls. No, that's so interesting to me. Yeah. So where are you in that process?
We're right at the initial phases. So our
ways to go.
We have ways to go. Exactly.
Oh, well, when you get a judgment or you get ready, just shoot. I want to know how it goes. The papers in San Diego, unless it hits national news,
right?
And I might not see it. So I'd love to just get an email. Hey, we just got our judgment, or this is what's happening.
I will.
I would love to hear it.
Yep.
So I would like to ask you to share with our listeners some final words that you think would help them in their whatever position they're in, if they're being victimized or they're traumatized in their situations. Specifically speaking to our female listeners, well, it doesn't matter if you're being victimized or people who care for them, who see that happening to them. What piece of advice might you give them?
I mean, what I stand up on is don't stay silent, right? Like, don't keep it inside you, because the only person that you're hurting is yourself. I think a lot of us go through this wanting to protect the person who abused us, which is very twisted, but there is like, how are they going to be affected? How's their family going to be affected? How are their kids going to be affected? And you can't cause any trauma by telling your story, right? You can only heal yourself by sharing it. So I tell them not to stay silent, and even starting with, journaling it to yourself where you don't want to share it with anybody, but just getting it out of yourself, I think really is one step to move forward. The other thing is just, I think for me, this is really powerful. Like it was like a light bulb moment when I realized this, but you change your thoughts, you change your life. It's really that impactful, right? Your thoughts are so powerful, but if you can flip them to think something else, you can have another experience in the world.
Well, that is a common theme I've been having my podcast guests in different words say the same thing, which I like, which tells me it's like the consciousness is coming up. Mm-hmm. We're all saying it. And this one gal said her father told her years ago that the mind is the maker, right? Your mind makes what's happening. And same thing, right? Coming to know yourself, what your triggers are and stuff also gets you to help you know your mind, what it's telling you and reacting to. So powerful.
Great.
Thank you for being a guest on the podcast. This has been great.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Great. I used to do rape prevention advocacy. So that years ago, then suicide prevention, all that but I remember a DA, he said, you got to testify and go, You have to testify, Sarah. And I said, I'm scared. He goes, everybody's scared. And he says, I tell you, if a lawyer stands up and isn't a little bit nervous, they're not invested. And this guy's like, I'm going, whoa. So whether it was true or not.
No, that's true.
Stand up, show up. That's the deal.
That's the choice.
So thanks for being you and for being a champion for people who don't have voices, for writing your book.
Thank you.
And for reminding us of what it means to share our stories.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic business coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. Please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Till next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.